Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table brought to you by the Blue Stable. I am your host, Luke Burkamp, and tonight I'm by myself once again. Things just didn't work out between me and Isaac. We both had some real life stuff going on last week as well as this week. I am going to be by myself this week. Next week, Austin's on vacation, so I will probably be trying to get a guest host on for that show. But tonight, I still wanted to get something out for you guys. I don't have my starts of the week this week because I just did not have time to do the research. And if I don't have the time to do the research, I don't want to be telling you guys stuff that I'm not 100% certain on, or something that I name my star of the week. I don't want my name attached to something I didn't get enough research on. So I'm just going to go quick through the news and notes. And something that we haven't really talked about much because we've been in the middle of the season is going to be talking about a little bit with Dynasty and Keeper leagues. I'm going to bring up a few names and what their ADP was at this past offseason on guys who would be kind of better to keep and stuff like that. So we'll get into it by starting with the news and notes. Starting off with Kenyan Drake, he broke his ankle and he's out for the rest of the season. Shame that now that he was starting to get usage, that he is now out for the rest of the season. But this helps Josh Jacobs a lot. I know people are going to be thinking about Peyton Barber, but I don't think Peyton Barber is going to be much because him and Drake are pretty similar in their roles. It's just that Barber is a lot worse than Jacobs in every way. And Jacobs can catch the ball. It's not like Jacobs is a bad receiving back. He's not an explosive threat like Kenyan Drake is, which I wouldn't say Drake is an explosive threat like a Naheem Hines or someone like that, but he's definitely more of that pass-catching role back. Tyrod Taylor has torn ligaments in his wrist. He hasn't been ruled out yet for this week, but we'll have to see where that goes. Jake Fromm is most likely going to start versus the Chargers, as Daniel Jones will most likely be out again. If you don't know, Jake Fromm does start for the Giants. So Chargers defense honestly might not be a bad play this week because they're going to be playing against one of the worst offenses in the league right now, against a third-string quarterback who I don't think has made a start yet. Julio Jones is designated to return from IR. He has not been activated yet, so keep an eye on that. But if he is out there on your waivers, I would go check. If he is, I would add him because they kind of need him right now. He hasn't looked good yet, so I'd want to wait till he gets a game under his belt before I start playing him. But definitely someone that you can pick up and if in a desperation can play. Because there's really nobody else to go to because they got that Nick Westbrook and Chester Rogers, I think, is there. So, yeah, they don't have a lot of options there right now. Joe Burrow is expected to play through his finger injury. If you didn't see, Joe Burrow's finger blew up like a balloon. So, yeah, he's going to keep playing through that. Most likely won't be anything major. Corey Davis is out the rest of the season. Now, this is big because Elijah Moore, who has been going on strong, might end the season as a fantasy, as a guy that can win you a fantasy championship. They have a lot of good matchups to end the season, and with Corey Davis out, that just means more targets for him and Jamison Crowder. I can't forget about Jamison Crowder. He's still going to get targets. He'll still be pretty good. But I think this is a bigger plus for Elijah Moore than it is for Jamison Crowder. If I look at his schedule, so these next few weeks, the Jets are playing the Saints, which is a good matchup, Miami, which is a good matchup, and Jacksonville, which is a good matchup. They also play Tampa Bay after that, which is it's not a great matchup, but it's still a pretty good matchup for wide receivers. Logan Thomas is put on IR and is done for the season. Very unfortunate because he just came back and he was starting to look very strong again. Now he's done for the season. We don't know for sure if it's a torn ACL yet or not, or at least I don't know. If it is, that is unfortunate because there's a chance that could end his career because it's going to take him out the rest of this year and probably the beginning of next year. Darren Waller is now day-to-day with his injury, so we'll see when he can come back. This one's pretty big, but Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are on the COVID list. So if they are out on Sunday, then that means that the Chargers will be down with their top 2 wide receivers. If that's the case, pick up Jalen Guyton just in case, because if both of those guys are out, Jalen Guyton is going to be the man. He's shown flashes, like he had 90 yards this past week and a touchdown. So I would pick him up now if you can, if you have bench space. Otherwise, you can wait till closer to Sunday to see if they actually are going to play or not. Elijah Mitchell is in the concussion protocol, so he has to pass this before he can play on Sunday. So if he's out, JaMychal Hasty might not be a bad spot start because, San Francisco offense, running backs usually excel there. So keep an eye on that. JaMychal Hasty would be a pretty good add if Elijah Mitchell is to miss. Jayden McKissick returned to practice on Wednesday. Just got to hope that if he does return on Sunday and plays, that he's not taking workload away from Antonio Gibson, or Gibbs season, as I like to call him. Because if he does take away some of Gibson's workload, then that just takes away that tremendous ceiling we saw for the past 3 weeks from Gibson. Tevin Coleman is also in concussion protocol, so if he is out and Michael Carter is still out, then that means Ty Johnson has it to himself. But I really don't trust any of the Jets running backs. Really, the only person I trust in the Jets offense right now is Elijah Moore. So, yeah, even if Coleman is out, I don't know what to tell you. If you're in desperation, yeah, go ahead and start Ty Johnson. If Michael Carter is out especially, but yeah, that's a rough backfield to be a part of. Speaking of Elijah Moore, he has a quad injury and is listed as day-to-day. So let's hope that he plays on Sunday because it's a good matchup for him. And with Corey Davis out, would love to see his ceiling potential with that. Justin Fields will be playing Sunday night versus the Packers. So Darnell Mooney, this probably helps Darnell Mooney quite a bit. And hopefully it helps David Montgomery be even better. We saw him finally have the game that we were looking for all year, which, I know he's missed time with injury, but that is a game that you like to see from David Montgomery. That's what you want to hope for moving forward, because the Bears, they really got to give them the ball to get their offense moving at all. Unfortunately, I sat him this past week, but it was okay because I replaced him with Javonte Williams, who did even better. But anyways, Joe Mixon was out from practice on Wednesday with an illness. They said it was non-COVID related, so most likely he's going to be playing this weekend. Adam Thielen has already been ruled out for Thursday Night Football. Mark Ingram got put on the COVID list. And speaking of Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara is expected to return this week. So, yeah, start Alvin Kamara. Should be anyway if you have him on your team, but in case you needed to know, you should start Alvin Kamara. Melvin Gordon practiced on Wednesday. Now, this is unfortunate. As I just said, I have Javonte Williams. And I was hoping Melvin Gordon would be out another game so we could get more of the Javonte Williams show. This hurts Javonte a little bit if he does play, but I still think he would be a good play because he's got a good matchup. They're playing Detroit, which is a great matchup for running backs. They are fourth. They're giving away the fourth most fantasy points to running backs. So he's still a good flex play. He just doesn't have that number one running back of the week upside like he showed last week. Kadarius Toney and Kenny Galladay were working at the site of practice on Wednesday, so they aren't actually practicing. They're just kind of working on the side. So got to keep track on that, see if they do get activated. But even if they do, I don't think I can trust any of the Giants wide receivers this week with Jake Fromm starting. So, yeah. Deebo Samuel did not participate at practice on Wednesday, so keep an eye on that. If he's out again, it's going to be a George Kittle show again. Brandon Ayuk put up a huge disappointment this past week, being the alpha wide receiver there. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. But it looks like he might miss another week, which I think was expected. David Montgomery did not participate practice on Wednesday either, and I forget what it said. Let me look it up real quick, but it was like various issues is what it listed. So I don't really know what various issues means, but it sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on with him. Keep an eye on that. If he's out, then Khalil Herbert would most likely be stepping up again in that role. I don't know how good it will be against the Packers, because the Packers have a pretty good defense this year. But yeah, keep an eye on that. Allen Robinson had a limited practice with a hamstring. If he does play, I still like Darnell Mooney better than I would Allen Robinson. So if you need to start Allen Robinson, you need to start Allen Robinson, but I wouldn't count on him doing much for your fantasy team. James Robinson had a limited practice with a heel and knee injury. So James Robinson, he's such a tricky guy, because this past week he fumbled early on and just basically got benched, which is amazing, but it's Urban Meyer, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But if he does miss, then I guess go pick up Carlos Hyde. He's going to get those guaranteed touches that you like in fantasy football. He'd be a good flex. So, yeah. And the final big news of the week was that Russell Wilson reportedly would accept a trade to the Giants, the Saints, and the Broncos. To me, out of those three, I really wouldn't want to see him. Actually, it probably would be a decent fit. I think I like the Giants the least. And as for the most, I'd probably say the Saints, because I want to see Aaron Rodgers on the Broncos. So my wish list would be Aaron Rodgers to the Broncos and then Russell Wilson to New Orleans. So if that's possible, please, fantasy gods, let that happen, because, I would love to see Aaron Rodgers with the weapons that Denver has, and Russell Wilson and Michael Thomas would actually probably be a pretty good connection, as well as having Alvin Kamara there. But yeah, if you guys have a preference on where you think he should go, leave a comment. I want to see what all different viewpoints that people have about that. But that's it for the news and notes. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about keepers and Dynasty. If you guys aren't in one of these leagues, I highly recommend it, especially Dynasty. Dynasty is very fun. It's where you have one startup draft. It's basically like a regular draft, but this is a team that you get to keep. So age plays a factor in a lot of startup drafts. Like, for instance, even though Christian McCaffrey was such a great player, Jonathan Taylor is very young. So, or I guess I should say, because Christian McCaffrey is still pretty young, like Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a very good running back, but Jonathan Taylor is a lot younger. So a lot of people would take Jonathan Taylor before Derrick Henry in these types of drafts, or like Devontae Adams and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase would go earlier in some dynasty startups just because of his age. People get to hold on to him for a decade, while Devontae Adams just has a few years left. Even though they're going to be very good years left, they're not going to have him for that longevity. And so I just want to say some like guys that you should keep an eye on for this offseason to see where their price tag's at. Most likely a bunch of these guys I'm going to talk about, their price tag has gone up a lot because they've been performing well. So I guess mainly this is for keeper. In keeper, you do regular drafts, but the following year you get to keep a certain amount of players. Like, for instance, the Blue Stable League that we have going on, we get to keep 2 players on the roster. And to keep the player, you spend the same pick that you did in the previous draft for that year. So, for example, I took DJ Moore in the 5th round of the draft this year. If I want to keep DJ Moore, I will use the 5th round pick this next year to keep him, which honestly would be pretty good. I will also say, for instance, I took Cam Akers, even though I knew he was going to be out the entire season. I took Cam Akers in the 13th round, just that way I could keep him at that price next year if he is going to be the starting running back for the Rams. Because everyone knows if you can get a starting running back in the 13th round, that's amazing. That's a steal. So that's my strategy that I went into it. So there's a lot of strategy that's kind of with the keeper leagues. But some guys that I think you need to keep an eye on, and probably if he is on your team and you are in a keeper league, you need to keep him. For example, the first one that I want to bring up is Javonte Williams. He got drafted as a running back 24, which let me look at what his rank is currently. Yeah, he's a running back 19. So he's a running back 19, and he's been splitting basically 50-50 with Melvin Gordon this whole time, which is crazy because just imagine what he would do by himself. We saw him just score almost 30 fantasy points this past week against Kansas City. And if he's by himself for a whole year, ooh, I would love that. But the Broncos could also bring in another running back to kind of split carries with Javonte, kind of like a Jamal Williams with Detroit, or I'm trying to think of another situation where that happens, like Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram type, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. I could see that being a possibility, but with the draft capital that the Broncos spent on Javonte, I think he's such a valuable asset to them. They value him greatly. They didn't just trade him they didn't just draft him in the 2nd round. They traded up to get him in the 2nd round. So I think they really like him. I hope that they just let him be the lone running back. And if he does, you're looking at Javonte being a high 2nd round pick most likely this next year. To me, he reminds me a lot of Gibson of last year. Gibson came on strong of late, but Javonte, he's been good all year. And so with him being good all year, and next year if he's going to be by himself, he's going to be an early 2nd rounder or potentially even a late first. I would not put that out of the possibilities. Next up, I want to talk about is Jaylen Waddle. Now, I saw Jaylen Waddle in the 2nd tier of rookie wide receivers, but behind Devonta Smith, because I had Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, and then Jaylen Waddle. It's mostly like a 1 Jamar Chase and then 2A Devonta Smith, 2B Jaylen Waddle. They're that close. But this year, Jaylen Waddle has really separated himself from the pack. He's the number 11 wide receiver on the year, and he got drafted as wide receiver 37. So if you have him on your team, he's a very good player to keep. Let me actually look around what round that would be. So he was drafted around the 60s, which 12, that would be 2. Can't do quick math right now. That'd be It's around the 6th, 7th round area, which 6th, 7th rounder for Jaylen Waddle next year would be a steal. So, yeah, Jaylen Waddle, if you got him on your team, definitely keep him. Same way with Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 1, and he got drafted at wide receiver 17 around the same area as Robert Woods. So, yeah, he's like, if you can keep him at anywhere that's not a first-round pick, you got to keep him. Then moving on, we also got Deebo Samuel. Deebo was falling down draft boards mainly because everyone thought Brandon Ayuk was going to take over that wide receiver room, but he did not. He got drafted at wide receiver 36, which is around the same area as guys like Cortland Sutton, Robbie Anderson, Jaylen Waddle, actually. And who's the next? Jarvis Landry. So you definitely would want to keep him if you have him on your team. He's been so dominant. Just physically, he's just dominating that wide receiver room. They got a really good tandem with George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. It seems like Brandon Ayuk has kind of been the odd man out this year, so we'll see if they get Ayuk more involved again. But yeah, Deebo Samuel is the guy. Now, there's also going to be some guys that you're going to keep that are early in the draft. So, for example, like Jonathan Taylor. I know there's at points where Jonathan Taylor was a second-round pick, and that was because Carson Wentz was out at the beginning of the offseason, and Quentin Nelson was going to be out for a significant part of the offseason. People thought they were going to miss a lot of time in the regular season, so that's why his draft stock fell. And, yeah, he's been a stud. So it's kind of like the Christian McCaffrey days a couple of years ago or the Todd Gurley days a couple of years ago. You're going to use that first-round pick on Jonathan Taylor because next year, say you're in the latter half of the league, which most likely you are if you had Jonathan Taylor on your fantasy team. So if you're like 8 or 9 or 10 and you could keep Jonathan Taylor at that pick, you know he's not going to be there if you let him back into the draft. So why not take him there? So, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, I would recommend keeping him no matter where you're at, whether you tanked and had the first pick of the draft, which actually, if you had the first pick of the draft with Jonathan Taylor, then you could just pick Jonathan Taylor the next year with that draft pick and keep 2 other guys. But basically, keep Jonathan Taylor wherever you're at. And the final guy that I want to talk about who's been having a very good rookie season and will hopefully improve next year is Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore got drafted at wide receiver 55, which let me look at around where that was, like who some of the other names were. We got names like Marvin Jones and Devontae Parker, Marquez Callaway, Henry Ruggs, which that's a different situation. That he basically was getting picked around the same range as kickers and defenses. So like a couple of the last few rounds. Yeah, Elijah Moore, he's just looking like a stud. In the second year is usually the biggest jump for wide receivers. So that's kind of guys that you like to target. Like this past year, a lot of people's targets was T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, which T. Higgins has done really well. So that's good to see. Justin Jefferson, another one. But yeah, you're always looking for those breakout players. And if you can keep Elijah Moore at that price, I feel like that's almost too good to pass up. So, yeah, basically the main thing I wanted to get out of this is look for value at the picks. Don't just use up your first and second round pick just because those guys are studs or whatever like that. Because, like, for instance, I took Austin Eckler with my first pick, and I might not keep Austin Eckler with my first pick. I like him. I think he's a great running back, but I'm probably going to be keeping Cam Akers with my 13th pick. I've just had him sitting on my RR spot all year. So that way next year when he's fully healthy and potentially starting running back again, I can keep him as well as keep another, like say DJ Moore in the 5th. Like if Carolina gets a new quarterback, then DJ Moore in the 5th might actually be a steal. So that's the kind of things that you got to watch out for. Don't just go with big names. Go with where you can get value. Because if you can get value, that means more to your team than it does just getting big name players. Because you can still get big name players with your first and second round picks. Even though a lot of other big names will be off the board, go ahead and you can still draft well. So, like, for example, say I did keep Cam Akers and DJ Moore. I had a 5th rounder and a 13th rounder. I still got the 1st through 4th round to draft around those guys. So I could still draft a top running back. Like next year, Christian McCaffrey might end up falling because of injury history. Or I could get someone else like Aaron Jones or Najee Harris or Austin Eckler again or Joe Mixon. You can get a bunch of different guys that will still be able to fill your other holes early on in the draft. I could still get wide receivers like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, stuff like that. It's not saying that the 2 players that you keep are going to be your running back 1 and your wide receiver 1. No, don't worry about that. Just go where you can get the best value for your team. As for Dynasty, I would say I highly recommend it. You get to keep those players from year after year, and you draft rookies. And the biggest thing is that a lot of people get concerned because they think it might get stale having the same players year after year. But I'm looking at my team. We're in the end of year 2. Like our playoffs are starting next week, and we started just last year. And I have almost a completely new team. Looking at it, I have a new quarterback. I started out with Deshaun Watson, and I have Patrick Mahomes. Antonio Gibson, I drafted myself. David Montgomery, I drafted myself. DJ Moore, I traded for him. Devontae Adams, I drafted myself. Dalton Schultz, I picked up. Javonte Williams, I had in my rookie draft. Matt Gay, well, kickers and defenses, that's whatever. Saquon, I traded for. Russell Gage, I picked up. Antonio Brown, I picked up. Hunter Renfrow, I picked up. Michael Pittman, I traded for. Dallas Goedert, I picked up off the waiver wire after someone else dropped him last year. Michael Thomas, I picked him up. So it's like there's a lot of trading, a lot of roster movement. It's not just that you keep the same team. It's still that you're trying to build it. And a lot of times that some teams use picks to build up their roster. So like right now, currently, I have 2 first-round picks next year. So I'll get 2 top rookies next year. It's one of those things is that you still get a lot of roster movement. It's just that it's a very different outlook on how you build your team. So, for instance, like if you can trade for Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty where you can keep him for his whole rookie contract, you would want to do that. Or say you can get Jamar Chase at a cheap value and keep him for his whole career, you would want to do that because you could have a very good wide receiver for 10 years. It's one of those things that sounds really confusing until you actually try it, but trust me, it is worth the try. Like I said, I've been playing since last year, and it's the most fun I've had playing fantasy football in a long time. Like I've said earlier in the shows, I've been playing fantasy football since 2014, and it's been pretty similar year after year. It's just you got to look for these players that you want to draft. players that are good values in different spots on who could take the starting spots from other people, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, Dynasty is just completely different. It's made me change my viewpoint. Like now I value younger players more than I do older players. And different positions matter more than other positions. It's very odd, but it's very fun. So yeah, I'm sorry it's a bit of a shortened episode, but I wanted to get something out to you guys tonight or today, whenever you're watching this. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can follow us on Twitter. I believe it's going to be on this side. Whatever side your left is, it should be this side. But at the fantasy table, at the Austin Isaac, at Big Verkamp. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.